I'm not a baseball fan, but I do know that feeling back in 2004, 2007, et cetera, and the Sox are going deep in the playoffs, and you're getting into later innings of a must-win game, and the reliever just starts getting hit. You're like, all right, we can take a hit. We can get man on first. Oh, Jesus, man on third now. They got a double. You start looking at Grady Little or whoever the manager is at the time, Terry Francona. You start saying, when are you going to pull this guy? When are you going to pull this guy? I feel that way about the transporter chief in this episode for Janeway, because how many people have to die before Janeway is going to say, this transporter chief has got to get the hell out of here. We got to get someone in here who knows how to not kill people when they send them through the transporter. That's all I can think about. Rough day for that lady. Rough day.
Yeah, she...
can I spoil...
Go ahead, Sean.
Can I spoil the... Because it's the woman who's the transporter chief, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let me spoil something, but she ends up being like a Maquis terrorist leader, and she starts to sort of plan a revolt. Mm-hmm. And she becomes like an enemy that keeps coming back in the future. Well, she has this weird sexual relationship with Chakotay.
They started her off
she's
evil.
Not a great character.
Well, they started her off evil by having her subterfugely kill everyone who comes on board the ship.
Very
I wonder
cavalierly,
if they
too.
planned her.
Yeah. Janeway doesn't do anything about it. Janeway's like, well, that was a hell of a thing. You killed another person. Back to it.
The whole everything about that, from the way that Torres was like so on board to use this woman as just a guinea pig for something that probably wasn't going to work, to the fact that she comes back dead, and then Janeway's like, well, just throw her in the trash, I guess.
Be married to one of those rocks out there. We are here, joined by Sean. Hello, Sean. How are you?
Hey, long-time listener. Used to be co-host. You might know my voice from my podcast with Clay.
That's right.
But I'm a big Voyager defender, and I've been listening to your episodes, and I'm impressed that you're so positive towards it.
Have you seen Enterprise?
No. I remember when you were having a poll to see which were you going to start first, Enterprise or Voyager. And I know everyone loves to sort of diss on both of these, but I know that Voyager is probably better than Enterprise. So when you dove into Enterprise, I was like, all right, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
But
we came out stronger from it.
Could not agree less, because I am so happy that we already did Enterprise, because I think that's a big part of why this one has come out of the gate so hot for both of us, because it's, I don't know, like Enterprise, we've said this a million times, but Enterprise was fine. But this just is, scratching that Star Trek itch.
Yeah. It's a better show.
Yeah.
Let's get to Emanations. This is the 9th episode of the first season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on March 13th, 1995, written by Brandon Braga. Directed by, I said that because of Enterprise, directed by David Livingston, in universe date 48623.52371. In this one, called Emanations, while investigating mineral deposits on an asteroid, Harry Kim is trapped on an alien planet, which is true, but doesn't really capture the episode, I suppose.
No,
in a lot of different ways.
Not at all.
I like this one. I think this is a good Star Trek example of, I really like the concept, and the execution was a little bit lacking by the end of it. It was the strongest episode that almost bored me to tears in a lot of ways. I thought it was good. And I liked what they were doing, and I thought in some ways it was kind of brave in a way that Star Trek doesn't usually get to, especially... I stressed about Brandon Braga, but again, where was Brandon Braga, this Brandon Braga for Enterprise, where the episode actually has a point and is about something? I don't know. We can start with you, Sean, I suppose, about this one being the guest, but I don't think this was a great episode. I don't know if it was a bad episode, but while I was watching it, I was kind of impressed by its bravery, and I don't even know if it ends up being all that brave, but I was fascinated by what it was choosing to talk about.
Yeah, as an atheist and Reformed Catholic, I wonder what I would have felt if I watched this when I was religious. I feel like a lot of the staff involved is probably not religious, and to do an episode like this, you can tell they want to go all the way, but they've got a lot of viewers from the Midwest who, probably don't want that, and you don't want to abandon half of your viewers. So like the angry, rebellious atheist in me was like, "Come on, turn it up to 11. Like, let's let these people feel the tragedy of their own delusions." And the part of me is like, why do you want to piss off half your viewers? There's a lot of religious people who are going to take it the wrong way or whatever. My big takeaway was, how is this not a massive violation of the Prime Directive on all fronts?
It is.
Big time.
The minute Harry Kim wakes up and he's like, "Oh shit, I'm in a new culture," he shouldn't say, "I'm from Voyager, I'm from a spaceship." He describes what they think about death, and then after like 20 minutes, he finally shuts up.
Well, what I thought was interesting is the show's aware of that, right? Like what I really liked about this episode is that the setup here, which is that it's kind of a Prime Directive violation in a strange way, which is that it's trampling on like death rituals, and Chakotay has that opening thing where he kind of awkwardly explains that he's an Indian and he believes that death rituals are
it's the
a
only
sacred thing, and that no one should.
The only thing
this.
they do with him in this show so far is give him that awful dialogue every time a spirituality thing comes up. Chakotay's there to talk about it because that's all they know about Native Americans, I guess.
That never changes.
Great.
Honestly, he's like, the criticism on him is he is every Indian ever. He's not a specific tribe.
Right.
He's just like blanket Indian, and it is kind of offensive. But the actor is Native American, and it's his choice to work for the show. So it was progressive at the time, but some of it does not age well.
He's fine there as a setup for this cause, which is that like he's like, back when I was out on some planet, I picked up a sacred stone, and I'll never forgive myself for picking up that stone and getting rid of it or selling it on eBay or whatever he did. So that they're aware that this is the theme, right? That the Voyager is somehow trampling into a death ritual that they're not aware of. And they do that well through, in some ways, Harry Kim is okay because Harry Kim gets to the other alien universe, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not from the afterlife. I don't know what you people believe, but that's not me." I thought the far more effective scene was when they bring the girl that they've brought back to life, and they shoot it.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's staring down on her, and they're going, "Don't be afraid! Don't be afraid!"
Could you imagine?
Screaming about,
what
like,
if
am I
what if when we die, we immediately come to on an alien exam table? That's like that's the most terrifying thing I can think of.
I thought it was brave of the episode.
Them shouting, "Don't be afraid!" all at once.
Right.
Just to
it's not helpful.
The thing about the episode that I thought was neat was that I liked that idea of Voyager crew stamping all over these people's beliefs without really recognizing what they're doing, because they get there and they're like, "What the hell? Where am I?" And they aren't aware that they're interfering in a Prime Directive kind of violation way. I thought that was neat. Unfortunately, it doesn't go anywhere, but I don't know what you guys thought about that, Clay. If you thought that was a decent starting point, or if you thought the episode dipped off of that, or whatever you want to talk about there.
Well, when it started, I had some serious reservations about this episode because the first thing they encountered was what looked to be an asteroid filled with spider webs, which said to me, giant space spiders, and I don't want anything to do with that. That would be a big nope for me. I'd immediately go back to the ship. But
I was confused when Chakotay goes, "What is this?" I was like, "It's clearly spiderwebs, Chakotay." Right. I don't know why you need to.
Well, I couldn't tell if that was a what is this that was like hampered by how much money they had to spend on the production, so all they could afford was like
the
Party
Halloween.
City cobwebs.
Oh my God! Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
But as this got going, I'm just going to jump right to the end. I love this episode. This might be my favorite episode we've watched so far.
Well,
I thought the ideas that they were playing with in this episode were really interesting. As soon as they got into the whole concept of it being a Prime Directive story about breaking the news to a culture, it has nothing to do with we're travelers from the stars. They're breaking the news to a culture that their afterlife doesn't exist. That's
right.
I've never seen that on Star Trek. That's a really interesting idea.
They kind of hedge their bets a little bit. They give themselves enough room to say that maybe it is an afterlife.
Well, see, that's actually what I liked about it. Like I know where Sean liked that they didn't go all the way. He didn't like that they didn't go all the way. I actually did like that they didn't go all the way because I didn't think it was up to the show to make those final decisions. So I actually liked how kind of open-ended it was to a certain extent. Like
I agree with you, Clay. Yeah, I agree.
They put a lot of questions out there, and they are not necessarily putting them out there with an intent to answer them. And I really was impressed by that. And yeah, I agree, Wes. I don't know where this Brandon Braga went to when he took over at Enterprise, but Jesus Christ. The 2 Braga episodes, or 3 or however we've watched so far, have been the best ones. So, I don't know.
Yeah. If you're is it against the rules if you find a dead body, can you revive that body and ask that person questions? Or is that has to be a Prime Directive no?
Yeah, well, if you isolate the person,
question.
you could. Yeah. I think if you isolate them, you can.
What is the Prime Directive rule for bringing a body back to life? Like you've
right, exactly.
You've got this technology that they clearly, well, I mean, maybe they do have it, but they clearly, for the sake of argument, don't have it, that you can actually revive someone who has died.
Right.
That's like the most Prime Directive you could possibly break. And that's actually, while I was I was a little bit bummed by the Chakotay stuff and how, he was kind of doing the generic Native American stuff. I actually didn't mind it that much at the beginning, because the conversation that he has with Harry I thought was really interesting about respecting the dead and even the thing about desecrating the tomb and all that kind of stuff, because it does play into the rest of the story. And Harry Kim remembers none of what Chakotay said to him, and just starts talking as soon as he shows up.
Well, he was just waiting for that moment to say, "Can I bring up my idea to the captain?" and wasn't really paying attention to the story that Chakotay was talking to him about. Yeah, he doesn't remember a goddamn thing that Chakotay. He might as well just stamp himself. This is the lesson of the episode, young Harry Kim.
For me, I think they could have cleaned it up if Harry Kim fucks up. Maybe they think that they know this culture. Maybe they think this is a culture they've had contact with, a spacefaring culture. So reviving a dead member of a species of a culture that maybe isn't so much a Prime Directive violation. But if it's a culture you've never discovered, and this culture has no idea there are other species and planets, whatever, that seems like it's more of a violation. But honestly, it all seems like a violation, because who are you to bring someone back to life if they chose to die? I mean, that seems like something that the Starfleet would understand.
I'd push back, because I think the Prime Directive is about cultural contamination. So if you isolate a person and you bring them back, there's no harm, no foul, because they're not going to go back and tell people about it. But if you started resurrecting them and sending them back through the wormhole to wherever they end up, I think that's where the problem arrives from.
You're more than free to bring people back from the dead, as long as you keep them in a dog cage somewhere where they can see nothing around them until they die from secondary natural causes once again.
So only revive them if you're going to imprison them forever.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's totally fine. See, what if Torres had made the decision to revive her because she wanted answers on where Harry Kim was, and Janeway got pissed at her because she's like, that's a clear violation of the Prime Directive. And then you had this tension of Janeway wanting to follow the rules and Torres saying, fuck the rules. And then you would have a cause for one of the crew members to have revealed all of this information. And, of course, the woman who is revived is horrified. And you still have all the stuff there, but I feel like that cleans up a lot of Prime Directive shit, and it builds tension between the Maquis and the crew.
Well, so would you say that? I guess the point would be, why would you want to do that, but do you think that the focus needs to shift to that from this place? Because I think what I like about this one is that it kind of avoids the Prime Directive like being explicitly mentioned by people, and it's more implied. And I think that Janeway being aware of the problem is interesting to me, because I kind of like the fact that the Voyager crew come across as idiots in this case, and that they don't seem to know what they're doing and how far they're stepping into it as they do this, which is strange, but it's also the point in a lot of ways, is that you can indirectly or be unaware of what you're doing. Would you rather have had the focus on a Prime Directive issue there, or do you think it's just because it's lacking in the other explanation of what the plot is about death and life and rebirth and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, But I just described as a different episode with a different theme. Like, I get it. You know, I would have taken it, I guess, in a different direction. But then it would be missing a lot of the parts that you like. There is that TNG episode where Worf's brother is leading these people through the desert. And there's all kinds of Prime Directive stuff talked about there. And
yes.
They actually have someone who figures it out and they isolate him. And I'm pretty sure that they explicitly describe some of the rules in that episode that should apply to this episode. Mm-hmm. But Janeway and all of the crew did not see that episode, apparently.
I think they can't send them back. I think that's the problem in that one. They're like, you're stuck here now, bud. Like, you can't go tell the other people about what you did. And then he kills himself in that episode. So,
well, it's funny you say that because I was legitimately shocked that what's her name? Pantera? What the hell's that girl's name?
That works.
Yeah, close enough.
Is that the one who comes back? The alien who comes
the one
back?
That they bring back. I was legitimately shocked that she died. Not only because it's kind of clunky and kind of a weird series of events, but just as her as a character, I was really expecting her to be the one who goes back and kind of, because there's a couple
revolution.
There's basically there's like one big glaring thread that is just really messy. I don't even know if I would call it messy from a story point, but it's messy from a damage that Harry has done point, which is somewhere on this planet is that guy with the bum leg who has run away, who is now understands what's going on about the fact that people aren't, when they die, they don't go into this thing, unless maybe they do. And like I was surprised that happened because I was expecting the girl to be that character. I thought she was going to go back and be the one like to kind of have this alternate point of view. But now you have this kind of like dangling character who's out there in the world, and it was a clever way to get Kim back to the ship. However, that final scene with Kim and Janeway, when they kind of like back off a bit and she's like, oh, well, you know, the energy kind of has got this thing and he's like, oh, so they do have an afterlife. And she's like, I don't know, who's to say? Well, the first thing I thought of was if I was Kim, I'd be like, oh my God, that guy. I told him that nothing happened when he died. Oh no. Oh no. You know, so it's even there, though. It's like I don't mind the messiness of it story-wise because I think that in and of itself is a really interesting situation to be in as far as a character who's out there with that kind of thing and the new information that Kim has learned and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The joke about that guy is his family must really not like him because he can do a desk job or something. He's not needed to be killed because his leg is a little bit weak or whatever they think is going on there.
The story in there has to be like he has a lot of money and he has a will somewhere, and they're like, well, you know, Dad, you can't really move anymore, so.
Before the machine is turned on, at the end, his widow just turns to the guy standing next to him and just starts making out and be like, oh, the son of a bitch is gone at this point. But
she just starts going like this. Making money fingers, laying the money hands on the thing.
I like this one because, well, the reason I think that it ends up being middling is I don't think they ever really get too much into what they want to talk about. And I'm not even really sure what they want to talk about in this besides the fact that death is uncertain and no one really knows. And it's another one of these, we had Ex Post Facto was the last one where me and you, Clay, like the final ending scene, even though it doesn't feel like it belongs, it's still like a good scene. I feel the ending scene here is the same. It's a good scene that I'm like, are they talking about the same thing that we just watched? Like, is this really what these guys would be talking about? Because what does Janeway think is Harry Kim's experience? The death that he came back from, or just going to that other world?
Yeah, it's a tough call because as I was watching that, as it was playing out, I was like, yeah, I mean, he has died and come back to life. That is something that probably deserves a couple days reflection, a painting's worth of reflection, if you will. But yeah, I think it kind of feeds into my biggest problem with the episode is that everybody kind of has a point of view in this except Janeway. I'm not really sure what Janeway's role is in all of this kind of stuff. She's just sort of there. And to have her be the one who has this conversation with Kim at the end, I feel like she should have been a little bit more forward in some of the discussions and ideas that were going around, instead of her just kind of like pointing where people should go and stuff.
Because Kes befriended that alien that came on. Yeah.
Yes, that would have been good. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets to a like, and I do want to talk about the symbol of like, I really loved the idea. It's very simple, but that Kim has to die to come back from the afterlife. Like whatever he considers the afterlife, or what these people would be considered the afterlife, is that he has to die to cross that plane. I thought it was kind of neat. I just thought that the ending felt like the writer got to the end and was like, shit, I missed the point I was trying to make. Here's the point in this last scene. And it's like the actions of the episode don't really reflect it, mostly because I think the scenes between Kim and that guy are pretty fucking boring. Like, it's really not that interesting when he's talking to that guy, and I understand that they think it's interesting, or this is the idea about what does it mean to die, what does it mean to, where do you go, what happens to you. And Kim is hamstrung because he can't really say anything because of Starfleet, and he also doesn't really know anything because he doesn't know where the fuck he is or what's going on. So he's just stuck there. And I thought that was the weakest part of it. And so when it gets to the end and Kim is being taught this lesson by Janeway, I go, I don't think he had a struggle in this episode that he needs to be told anything about this point. He was kind of just stuck in that room for a while, and then they got him out, and that was the end of it. It was a stressful get out, but he's back now and he's okay. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wish that he had a different takeaway from, like, that scene with Janeway. I think part of the disconnect is, like, for me anyway, in the way that I think she's used and plays into the story, is that conversation she has with Kim seems like a conversation that's being had from the point of view of someone who has really no idea what Harry Kim just went through. You know, it's sort of like a general...
It's a Hallmark card.
Yeah, it's kind of like a general bedside manner, kind of like take a few days to really think about the experience kind of thing. And so I kind of was hoping there would be another scene where Harry actually expressed some of what he felt. And I think that's where Kes could have come in, because Kes was right there with this other woman who ended up being the one that dies and stuff and brought back to life.
What if the guy that runs away to the mountains instead actually goes through the procedure for some reason, even though at that point Harry Kim has told him the truth about it? I think that gives Kim something to chew about like, what did that guy think? Like, why did he do that and things like that? And he can make they can make a point about, like, it's good for the family. This alien race seems to think that it's good for the family if this guy dies, and they think of it as a good news that this guy's chosen to leave. And they could have played that up, and they don't, because that guy just gets away. And so it comes back to I don't really know what Kim learns here, unfortunately.
Right,
I don't know.
Right.
Sean?
Was Tuvok in this at all? I'm trying to remember.
He runs around with Janeway quite a bit in the background.
Because he has a lot to say about spirituality. Maybe that's not until we get later into the series. And I kind of felt like maybe a little monologue from him would have gone a long way somewhere in the episode.
Yeah, you don't have crew members give their ideas about death or anything moments in this one.
Yeah, especially from him, because you are dealing with a question that is one that ultimately defies logic. Like, I don't think kind of the whole thing with that culture is you're kind of talking about how even the most logical people in the world don't know what happens when you die. And so there's no logical way to really rationalize or irrationalize any sort of afterlife thoughts or ceremony around it and stuff like that. So as someone who is supposedly as straight down the middle as possible, it would be interesting if he came in with, like, maybe a little bit about the fact that it's a little bit maybe I don't know what Vulcan funerary rites are like, but it could be something about him talking about Vulcan funerary rites and then acknowledging the fact that it is highly illogical that the Vulcans would have funerary rites, being the species that they are, but for some reason they still do.
It comes... Well, I guess this is the question for you. would letting people know what happens when you die be a bad thing? If, like, the truth was discovered, be what it is. Like, say that it's the Christian heaven actually exists. Say it's the Islamic heaven exists. Whatever the Jews believe. That's one of those things. Say it's one of those...
Heaven, but better.
Say it's one... Or it ends up being we actually do what these people do and we go to an alien asteroid planet. We just sit there in webbing. Is it a bad thing to know the truth in this case? Are you just hurting people's feelings by... Are you actually hurting them by not telling them what goes on in their belief system?
I think you're hurting them by disrupting a lot. I mean, think about the taxes that the church doesn't pay, and like the history of the species, given the culture, whatever. We don't even know much about it. But imagine if you told us that human beings are supposed to just like. So do we just start charging churches taxes now if we know that there's no such thing as heaven? What about all these people who revolt, who hate it? What about people who split off in the other direction and claim conspiracy? I mean, most people wouldn't even believe you anyway, but I feel like that's a giant wrench in the system. I
think that's the problem with the premise that they can damage them, is that I don't think they would believe him no matter what. Like, if this society's built around this idea, you can adapt the truth to fit Scripture in that case. So it's... Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a positive. Like, I generally think that truth is just kind of a positive. So it's interesting to me here that it's like, well, we have to hide this from these people because they're too stupid to understand exactly like what the problem would be if we told them the truth. And also, they don't even have to really lie, because they can be like, well, you end up here, but then your brain spirit seems to go into the ring, so we don't really know what happens after that. So there you go.
Yeah, I
feel like telling them the truth about what happens after death would be like giving them a phaser. It's just giving them a technology that they're not ready for. Yeah. Are you treating them like they're stupid? Well, they're not as advanced as you, but they might get there, I think is the generous way that Star Trek would say it. I'm sorry, Clay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I was just going to say, one of the things that I found really interesting about this episode was so when it first started and it got into what the actual plot was about how the society was essentially euthanizing people earlier than need be because that was seen as a kindness, blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. I kept waiting for the secondary malicious element to be revealed. So, like, they were feeding them to a monster or something, or like the planet was alive. Yeah, like I immediately thought of Discovery, the Kelpian stuff on Discovery, where it's like, oh, they have this belief that at a certain point they have to basically be culled for the good of the species, but it turns out they're being used by this malevolent force, blah 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 blah, and then
for food, I think, right? They just eat them.
In that case, the truth sets them free and is a positive. But they don't do that here. I think it would be the easy thing to do that, but they don't. They leave it completely ambiguous and completely unknown. And so I do think there is that element where it's not as easy of a decision whether or not the truth is the right thing to tell them. Because while you're right, I think you're both right that I think Harry Kim talks to 3 people, right, maybe, in this whole place. Even if they believed him, they're going to be like, we can't tell anybody about this. Do not say anything.
Yes.
But even if it does get out, because you get that one guy out there, it's like you don't know what sort of repercussions that's going to have, because there is no directly malevolent force that needs to be destroyed by the truth in this situation. It's just a belief of a people that you give them evidence that it might not be the way it is, and is that really the right thing to do if it ends up like crumbling their societal structure or something? But at the same time, they're also killing people unwarrantedly. If that's a word,
right? They're killing people early is the problem.
Yeah. So it's a really kind of muddy situation, and I really like that they're just like, we're just going to put this all out here and kind of let you sit with it for a bit.
Yeah. Sean, I'll ask you. I find all of this very fascinating, but I find the episode disjointed. And I don't know if it's actually thinking about any of this, but it's thrown together ingredients that make a really fascinating stew, but it's not sure what to do besides stir them around a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
Would you...
Yeah.
I guess you would agree with that, but is that a flaw, or is it an interesting aspect of the episode for you?
For me, I like more definite answers. I don't like open endings, and it's like, what do you think about it, viewer? But I can see a lot of people liking it being open-ended, especially when you're dealing with something as personal and as complex as religion. So the way they handled it is probably smart, especially for the time. I'd like to see more divisions in the crew and where they align on this, because it's kind of a gray area with the Prime Directive, and I thought maybe there'd be some nice drama between characters disagreeing with each other, but that's a different episode.
Not too much at stake, really, because it's just Kim.
Right.
You know, the ship isn't
true.
really in
It's
danger.
just...
They try to make it seem dangerous. They're like, there's dead bodies coming in everywhere.
It's like, that was hilarious.
Not really doing anything.
That was hilarious. Once the vacuole or whatever just started dumping corpses on the Voyager. I thought that was really funny. And they're like, we got another one just fell out of sickbay into the engine room.
Were they supposed to be saying that the danger was what one of the bodies is going to hit the warp engine? Is that what they were afraid of happening?
There
was going to blow it up or something?
Something about the...
It was attracted...
Yeah, I was just saying something about the...
It was attracted to the cell.
Yes.
Well... Because it has your thing, Clay. Your least favorite thing is unnecessary movement. They leave, and then the ship just comes back 2 minutes later.
That's true.
Asteroid ring.
Yes, I don't like that. I would technically call necessary movement, because they did have to come back to
necessary for
a
stupid reason. Yeah, it ultimately doesn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, what I did like though was when you say it's just Harry. There is even that point in the episode where I think Torres is like, we've got 10 minutes, we got to go. And then Janeway's like, well, let's go.
Let's not even wait around. Let's not give a few minutes. Yeah.
The other thing that I actually really liked about it, too, was by the end of the episode, you don't even have any idea where he is or where he went. It's not like, he knows how far he went. And once he got sucked into
never bring it up.
It's just... no idea. They never find out where he is. He just comes back, and this is kind of it.
I thought the episode should have ended with back on that planet with those aliens, and they're like, "Wow, that was a hell of a thing. We can't let all that bad news get out." And they look out, and they're like on a moon base or something. The Earth is just standing right there, and it's like Harry Kim almost made it home. He just had to look out the window.
Yes, yeah.
That the pod that they put people in, it looks like a metal beach bag.
Yep.
Did this culture invent that? With the tubules or whatever, like it's sort of a transporter in a way. Did they invent this thing, or is this thing like tied with some natural phenomenon that dumps these bodies out on meteors?
They found those little wormholes, and then they built this base around those things for whatever reason.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unclear if I think it's more of a ceremonial thing than anything else. Like this is going to happen in that area regardless, like that sort of transportation. Right. And they built this sarcophagus around it that is also essentially like a cowpuncher inside of it to kill you and then send you on your way.
Is that what those things do? Those kill you? That was the point of that?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they actively kill you. They don't just like get you out of here and you die on that planet or whatever. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
This episode gave me an idea for a great, cheap spinoff. I'm curious what you guys will think of. The whole time, I just couldn't shake the fact, like, this is just a giant violation of the Prime Directive. I kind of want to see a Star Trek series that's basically a court show that's going over cases for the Prime Directive, but it's sort of shot like Night Court. And you would be able to like revisit TNG episodes from the 80s and be able to, you have these like hard-hitting dramas, but Jack Nicholson, like, this is why this is illegal, this is why blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know how you would get these actors to come back and de-age them, but I think it'll be interesting to see just like a court case thing in Star Trek, and think of how cheap that would be.
Do you find the Prime Directive an interesting topic, really?
Yeah, it's fun to throw around for sure.
Yeah, I find it broken in a lot of ways. And maybe that's what makes it interesting. But it's I don't like Voyager's been a confused version of the Prime Directive so far. I hate the TNG version of the Prime Directive. I think DS9 plays with it very little or appropriately. And Enterprise didn't really know what the hell was going on with the Prime Directive either. So Voyager, I would sum it up as their Prime Directive it's very similar to their concerned about replicator rations. They bring it up kind of when they need to, and it's not super important to them. I would argue that the show could actually focus on why it doesn't matter to them, because they're pretty far away from everything, and sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
I have always wondered why they don't have that conversation more, because, like, you know, I think the thing that all three of us would probably like more from the show is more tension between the Starfleet guys and the Maquis guys, and that just seems like such a great singular point to have division over. Where, you know, you are, as we talked about before, Janeway kind of presents as like maybe a newer captain who is trying to do things as by the book as possible, and she's half of her crew now are essentially pirates, and so having them so far away from home, it really kind of puts pressure, or it should anyway, puts pressure on some of these ideas that Starfleet holds on to. And does Janeway just go down the line and be like, nope, Prime Directive this, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z? But when you've got Chakotay there being like, listen, I understand what you're saying. We are 75,000 light years away from anything. We need to get home.
Replicator rations, bitch.
We're not flying into another nebula so you can get coffee.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
The only reason I had this tattoo on my face is someone paid me to do it because I needed rations. If I shave my head, it actually says "fuck you."
The Maquis are set up.
It's funny.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of people tend to think of Janeway as the most Kirk-like out of all the captains.
Interesting.
And she seems fine breaking some rules as we move forward. In fact, Chakotay is the one that's kind of hitting the brakes, and she's the one that's hitting the gas. And eventually they do so much time travel, and they realize that she comes up with the temporal prime directive. Like, she realizes the prime directive should apply to time travel as well, and how it affects them and how they're affecting others. And it's pretty good, actually, and it definitely affects the finale as well. But the writers eventually realized, man, there's a lot of time travel in Voyager, and I think most of it's well done. But they decided to address it, and they created the temporal prime directive, and then they created that clandescent team, like Team 5, or what is it called, Clay? Because they're making a show out of that.
Section 31.
Thank you, Section 31. It's the Section 31 activity is tied to the temporal prime directive at some point. It gets pretty good. It's Salt Lake season 5. Sorry to bury the lead.
It's fine. I have one question for everybody before we probably go, because it's been 40 minutes. What could someone tell you that you wouldn't want to know? And how these aliens are told something, they don't want to know about it because it would shatter their universe. I'm just trying to think of what someone, unless it was like, I don't even know. Like, the worst thing I can come up, there's nothing universe shattering, but there would be like someone's true opinion of me. But even then, I'd be like, "Oh, that kind of hurts," but I'm all right with it, I guess. I can't think of anything that would shatter my worldview in that way. But I'm curious if anybody knows anybody can think anything about that.
What if we told you we knew when you were going to die? Would you want to know that?
I was actually thinking about that the other day.
Just because you were sitting there surrounded by the chaos of a house full of 3 young children, and you were just like, when am I going to die?
I was like, I wish I would die. I wish this was the day. No, I don't think I do want to know when I would die. I don't think I would want to know. Would you want to know how you died and not the when?
No, I don't want to know any of it. Just make it a surprise.
I think that just ruins the... Because I do like the stoic idea, the philosophy of like treat every moment as if it's the last time you're going to be doing something. I think it's like a good way to go through life, and it sort of reconfigures your mindset and stuff. And I think if you knew that, it puts pressure on those moments in a way that isn't helpful, really. So,
well,
I don't think
I do find it. I don't think I would want to know either. But on the other hand, it's like I think that brings up a lot of interesting fate questions, because if someone from the future or an omniscient force or something told you when the when and how you were going to die, would you just take the brakes off until then and just be like, well, fuck it, let's just do some crazy shit because I'm not going to die for another 30 years? Or is that line unbreakable? Or is everything you do driving to that point, no matter how crazy it is, so like you can't actually kill yourself before that point? Or, it brings up some interesting questions.
I would just ask the genie or whatever. I would say, do I have enough retirement savings to retire right now?
Yeah, I want to get down to zero, and then my heart gives out.
I don't want any of this money to go to waste. I don't want it sitting in some Vanguard target fund. I just want this to come back to me, and I'll do what I want.
Yeah. If I don't want my kids to have it. I don't want their kids to have it.
If I budget this out,
I want to leave them.
How can I ride this out and not work?
How willing should I be to take on more and more debt at this point?
Right. Should I sign this mortgage? Is this an appropriate mortgage to sign for me right now? Mm-hmm. So you can't nothing anybody could think of that you'd be shocked, disturbed to learn the truth about? The lizard people, the Illuminati, anything?
Like that wouldn't really bother me. Yeah, I mean, well, I think about that. That's one of the things I find fascinating about all that stuff, about the flat Earth and whatnot. Is like that's one of those things where if you were to be told that tomorrow and shown irrefutable evidence that the Earth was flat, does that really change anything as far as the world goes? Not really.
No.
That's why my favorite conspiracy theories are the ones that are ultimately incredibly low stakes, because people go so hard for them, and then it's like, all right, let's say for a second you're correct. I'm still going to work tomorrow. You know, it does. I just found out who really wrote Shakespeare. I still gotta figure out how to make money and go to my job.
Well, the other side of it is if you ask for some truth, and it turns out to be what you know, you've wasted your wish. Like, you're like, is the world round? He goes, yes, it is. You go, fuck, I knew that. I wasted my wish. That's too bad. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything that would No, it's all just personal stuff. I can't think of anything that would, because it's not really about knowing the future. You know, it's not about knowing what's going to happen to you. It's about some kind of like how that would shift your. And I guess that comes down to just my question about the episode is whether or not this is another Voyager episode, I think, Clay, where I think they could have made multiple versions of this, and I think there are some that are more interesting, some that are less interesting, but it's like it's this fog of an idea that I think they could have sat with, and maybe they'll come back to it. But you can pull a lot of stuff out of this, and where they ended up, it's kind of just down the middle for me eventually, unfortunately. Yeah. But it's good enough.
Yeah.
Do
you guys rate these too?
We do. Yes. You're gonna head out after this. So Sean, we'll take your rating.
No, I'm gonna go with 3 out of 5, just middle for me. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. Gets extra points for really trying to do some big ideas, but your whole description of it's sort of a salad with a lot of ingredients or soup, whatever, and they just kind of start around a little bit. I think that's fair.
That's fine.
I think there's other episodes that tackle this sort of thing better in this series and in TNG. If you want an episode that talks about this stuff, I think I can have better candidates than this one.
Yeah. I asked you if you're rating just in case you have to go, but I would agree that it's like Half-a-Life is good in TNG, but it's kind of different. I thought this was actually a pretty unique Star Trek idea execution. Like, they've talked about death before and stuff like that, but I don't think I'd ever seen one played this way, where the Star Trek-y, like, transporter, I don't know where the hell I am thing kind of plays into it in a non-personal way. It's interesting. Yeah. We'll go through comments. If you have to take off, you can take off. But that's it for...
Sure. Oh, I do want to say one... Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead if you have it.
I was going to say, just because I've been listening to you guys, I want to defend Tom Paris for a second.
Sure.
Boy.
I think I agree with you. Like,
you know what? I know the truth. The truth I don't want to hear is I don't want to hear whatever he has to say about Tom Paris. Sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
They tried to make him a rebel badass, but that actor just doesn't pull that off. And I think that this character will find his footing when he becomes like a 1950s fanboy. He gets really into like old Doctor Who episodes, and he starts using the holodeck to make black and white episodes, and it's some pretty fun stuff. Like, to me, he makes more sense in the later seasons than he does now, but it's fun seeing the evolution of him. And I also agree that Neelix is annoying, and I think you'll find him mostly annoying through the whole series, but he is eventually balanced with like not a mean streak, but he can be very edgy when he needs to be.
Okay.
And the relationship with him and Tuvok is probably one of the best in the series.
He's not in this
Kes
episode either.
Hearing
another episode where Neelix is not present.
Another reason why I loved it.
Should have picked a different one. Yeah, I know. You're right to think that he's only annoying right now because he doesn't really add anything else. And I didn't realize how great of a character the Doctor was until I heard you guys talk about it. Because you're right, he is amazing, and he's always one of my favorites. But he sort of formed amazing. Like, he didn't eventually get good. He's always been like, him and Tuvok have always been pretty solid coming out of the gate. You know?
Yeah, they're strongly. I would say they're the best actor match for their character. Like the actor is doing all the work when we don't really know too much about them. Like the Doctor, you don't know much about the Doctor outside of like what you can intellectually comprehend about him. You're like, well, he's not a real person, but for some reason he seems real, and no one treats him like he's a real person, which is strange. And Tuvok's just doing a Spock impersonation, but that's enough for me to make him one of my favorites.
Yeah,
so,
honestly. Yeah.
Fine. I mean, we're coming off of Enterprise.
Cool.
Again, I know some people like Enterprise, but it's like, I couldn't tell you anything about those characters. We watched 4 years of that show, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I've seen a few Enterprises. One that was like a pretty good Borg episode.
Yes,
but I had a hard time getting past the song, honestly. And I know it's a dumb thing to get hung up on.
Nope,
but,
totally reasonable.
I was in college when it came out. And okay.
Well, it's better than knowing the truth, which is that it's like the greatest TV show of all time, and you just couldn't get past the wire. That would be your genie truth. It'd be like, Sean, you'd really love Enterprise if you sat down and watched it. Outside of this.
Is this how I kill myself, Genie? Just thinking about doing it.
But Sean, you'll be your favorite show, but you'll die before the finale on your Netflix stream. It's like, well, this is just awful. All right.
Oh my God.
Let's go to Patreon comments.
All right, guys.
Then.
Thanks for having me as a guest.
Sure.
I'll see you guys later.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks,
Have a good
Sean.
one.
You too.
Talk to you soon.
See you.
All right, Clay. We're here. It's just the two of us again. Just the two of us, which is appropriate for Will Smith just smacked Chris Rock. We're about 10 weeks out of that, but we're still talking
Did you ever think you would see anything as fucking crazy as that? Like,
no,
it's just like
something is without repercussions that's as crazy as that. Like, it's not the Oklahoma City bombing or anything.
No, of course. But, it's just like it's one of those things that is so wild that even though it is pretty objectively was real, there are many people who think it was staged, like it was a wrestling match, which I also love because everything is wrestling, and you just learn that as you go through life. But it's just such a Will Smith, one of the last great movie star, got up on stage and smacked the shit out of one of the guys at the Oscars. and then he won the fucking Best Actor award. I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah, maybe the truth will have come out in the time since we were recording this and when people are going to hear it. But yeah, we're the Chris Rock thing, as we're recording this, just happened like yesterday or something, 2 days ago or whatever.
That's the truth. That's the truth I don't want to know. Now I know that is like, if I don't want to know that was a work. I want kayfabe to exist in life.
Thanks everybody for listening today. Thanks to Sean for joining us. That was good. Sean's a big defender of Voyager, and he wanted to get his thoughts about Emanations. He chose an episode that he's lukewarm on, which is funny, but he'll probably be back in the future for another one. So let's talk about the patrons who support this show and supported Emanations. Thanks everybody for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/The Penske Files is the best way to do it. We're still covering Picard, I assume. If we're not, we're getting close to Strange New Worlds. So thanks very much for supporting us and getting to listen to that. Clay and Amanda have their continuing coverage of all the Stephen King second stringers. And then there's some badass stuff rolling out too. So Sean is on the Patreon for that. Whatever you guys are talking about, we'll catch up at the end. Special thank you goes to Ben Douglas, Tark Latif, Andrew Sherlock, Joint Mango, Kyle Barrett, Christian Pouch, Mike Bernack, Matthew Ross, Michael Pond, Mike Cutler, Brandon Howells, Nick Sergey, Grim Santo, Sean, Bradley Killens, Dwayne Hackett, Vault 13 Hero, Kevin Reyes, Jordan Cooper, Darth Mosk, Russell Elledge, Stephen Minton, HH28, Derek Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jacob123, Patrick Seba, Dave Davies, Point Extra G, Barry Wallace, Jamie Crow, Captain Brazen, Eric St. Antoine, Jake Keys, Gamer, Kevin Lowry, Nick the Rat, William Scheisler, Rayhan Jaffer, Grapple John Zone, Zane Majors, Olivier Pardur, Tom Hickey, Jose Hunter, ZWNF Remixes, Captain McMunchausen, James McLennan, Disbrother Jonas, Tommy Tango, Admiral Nakamura, Edmark Starr. The second page says Tuvix Must Die, Chris McLaughlin, Royo, Jeremy Boudreau, Rage for the Machine, J-Man, The Undiscovered Mugado, Robbie Duffield, Daniel Adam, Will Clay, Atanga Udom. Thank you very much, everybody, for supporting the show, making this month of Patreon a rip-roaring success. All right, Clay. Patreon comments. There's 16 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Norman Buckhold says, this is probably the episode where some of Chakotay's insistence of respecting the dead comes off as unintentionally comical. Janeway does not handle first contact well with an alien who hoped she was in heaven. As for Harry Kim's dilemma in the other dimension or whatever, it was in handling the aliens there that at least made the story novel. Still, I admit this is an episode that I see had promise, but the execution was less than to be desired, which unfortunately is a theme that's going to come up with some Voyager episodes from time to time. 2.5 mummies out of 5. James McLennan says, there's a skeleton of a good episode here, mummified under a thick layer of meh. Some of the ideas that the characters wax philosophical about are interesting, but it's not enough to salvage the fact that the plot itself is nearly non-existent. 1.5 Afterlifes out of 5.
Wow.
Matt Ross says, Star Trek has always had a weird relationship to death and religion, being both agnostic and very religious throughout various series. This one episode again does display both beliefs, leaning more on agnosticism. The alien culture's belief of the afterlife and their odd location of a burial, and at the same time how they can become a necessary mineral, was a bit disturbing. Harry being trapped was also unsettling, but less than the revived alien. The questions of when to die and the reluctant Haddle's desire for more time and life and a break from religious doctrine raises interesting concepts that made me think and question as well. A story that left me a little bit disturbed. 4 corpses out of 5. Wide swath of opinions about this one.
Yeah. I do find the also wide swath of approaches to death in Star Trek very fascinating, because you've got this episode, which brings up a lot of questions and kind of lets you just sort of sit in them. And then you've also got Star Trek 5, where I guess it's less death and more just like afterlife and deities and stuff, where you get representatives from multiple planets, multiple races and alien races that all have an idea of what God is, and they think they're on the way to meet him. And you get to the point where even Spock is like, holy shit, I think this is God. And then Captain Kirk rolls in and he's like, now fuck this guy. It basically unplugs him, and he's like, see, it's all fake.
What would God need for this? What would God need with a starship is...
It's a great album title.
It's a great album. It's probably one of the best Star Trek single lines of dialogue, right? Like, it sums up the series in a lot of ways. It's a good Star Trek line. I think people kind of maybe they don't make fun of it, but it's always seen as kind of a parodied line or whatever, but I really like it. A Latte Librarian says, this episode is like a good sci-fi short story. Death rituals are a huge part of culture, and Star Trek doesn't often explore them in depth. Neat idea with decent execution. 4 Afterlife asteroids out of 5. Eric McGowan, I don't think Garrett Wang is really able to sell the material here, which is the primary flaw of the ep. Other than that, I still find this episode to be on the dull side. Royo says, it's kind of understated, but Chakotay really makes an ass of himself at the start of this one when he insists that scanning with tricorders would disturb the sanctity of the burial site, but he insists on visual observation only, which requires physically strolling through dead bodies, as we find out. He also declares the lack of clothes on the dead is a sign the race doesn't believe in dressing the deceased, and the lack of objects a sign that they don't believe in worldly goods that can be taken into the afterlife, when we learn later that they wrap themselves in their own family death shroud, passed down generation to generation, and they don't know what happened to their bodies. Not only is Chakotay's anti-technology stance more invasive to the dead and starves the expedition of information, the theories he pulls out of his ass are comically full of shit. Garrett Wang's acting is really poor here. He can only tell us he's chilled to the bone, and he can't actually emote it, making this the first of the painfully mediocre episodes that would plague Voyager's run. There might be something to say about religion cheapening the value of life by downplaying death, but I'm not touching that with a 12-foot science pole. 2 out of 5.
Well, see, what I find interesting about that, though, is like, I think it's possible for Chakotay just to be wrong and for it not to be wrong in like a dumbly written way. It's just that he's just wrong. Because I think one of the running things in this episode is that nobody knows what they're talking about anything. Janeway doesn't know what's going on. The alien races don't know what's going on. Chakotay doesn't know what's going on. Everybody brings their own kind of stuff to the table. Also, we didn't mention that the guy who is the lead alien priest or whatever is Jerry Hardin, who is Deep Throat from the X-Files. It's a great TV actor. Yeah. But yeah, it's like, and the idea of Janeway kind of beefing it when it comes to handling the situation, it's like, I kind of don't mind that, because it doesn't become a plot point, obviously, so you can debate whether or not that's on purpose, or maybe it's just not written super well. But like, I don't know. This is a situation where everybody's kind of wrong about everything. And so it interests me in that way.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes that I wonder how much of the intent makes it through, and it's more just like the knuckleball just like kind of fluttered over the plate, and you're like, wow, that actually ended up in the mitt. Like that's kind of fascinating. Yeah, because I would agree. I think it's metaphorically maybe more interesting than it is in execution, I think, is the problem with it. Like it has these really great ideas that are neat, and like, Chakotay talking about that stuff, even because Chakotay talking about the Native American stuff is like, wow, this is really hacky stuff right here. But at the same time, it ties into everything. So it's interesting at the same time as it is kind of hacky. It's weird. Jonas says, Emanations, this will never do. 1 out of 5.
Wow.
Point extra G. Contrasting the theological beliefs of life and death with the soul and the cold, hard science of Star Trek is something very ripe for storytelling. This episode takes the we don't really know avenue, and Voyager does another much better version of this later in its run. Chakotay's concern about disturbing a culture burial ritual, I'm having a hard time saying burial rituals, is one of the few things they managed to get right about his Native American roots, and we may as well start the official tally for number of times that Harry Kim dies.
Ooh,
well, it's at 1.
Okay.
We'll put one up on the screen. Cal Barrett says, Emanations, there are a few things I love in fiction more than giant spiders, so I don't appreciate the fake out with all the webbing at the start of the episode. But I do like the general concept of this one, and despite being a massive atheist, although not in an arrogant, dickish Ricky Gervais type way, I like exploring the reasons why people have certain belief systems. This episode begins to do that, and there's some interesting discussions and perspectives, but it bites off more than it can chew, and it never ends up saying anything, ending on an ambiguous note that feels disappointingly passive rather than poignant. And of course, Harry Kim dies. He was like a candle in the wind. Fucking useless. 3 extra nostrils out of 5.
That might actually have been my favorite part of the Will Smith Chris Rock discourse. Is like immediately after it happened, everybody was like doing wrist exercises, ready to swing at Ricky Gervais the next time he hosts something. Which is like, okay.
I always liked Gervais hosting. I always thought he was pretty funny. He's maybe he's not perfect. Did he ever host the Oscars, or was it just Golden Globes?
I think just the Golden Globes, yeah.
He's good for the Golden Globes because no one really cares about it, so it's like it's a good enough time to roast.
Yeah.
I don't even know if people care about the Oscars because all we're talking about is Will Smith slapping somebody. So it's like, I'm not going to see the movie that won Best Picture. I don't think, it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah. He also, I think, recognizes how ridiculous what he's doing is. That they have
Smith or Gervais.
Gervais, that they have all these hoity-toity award ceremonies, so he just goes there and just, pisses on everything.
Yeah. I don't find Gervais that annoying, really. Maybe it's different for Britain because he's over there more.
I think it's situational.
Maybe he's more prominent of a... Yeah. Yeah, I still love The Office, so I can't hold that against him. What the hell was Kyle saying? I thought there was I was going to make some point, but maybe I'm not going to make a point. No, I'm not going to make a point. Benjamin Espinosa says, super heady, dark ruminations on the afterlife, soul-crushing realization that there is no afterlife, just a dusty cave set up on Paramount's backlot. This script is classic Trek all the way, heartbreaking yet hopeful at the same time. I don't recall the first season of Voyager being this strong. 5 space vacuoles out of 5. Oh, interesting. Right. Powerful. Aaron Million says, I'm not sure why Chakotay was so concerned about disturbing burial grounds as he walked around in them, but this one was good track, showcasing someone who didn't want to but was being forced to conform to what his society dictates he do. It also made me think, how would I feel about that if I lived in a culture like that? 4 vacuoles out of 5. It is a thinking episode. It's interesting. Yeah. Grappler John Zorn says, Emanations, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Really, I looked it up. -1 -1 for bad multiculturalism, -1 for spatial anomalies, -1 for not even getting around to writing synonyms for the main technobabble refrain. 2 out of 5. Is it emanations that's not being used correctly? I think emanations is used somewhat correctly here.
Let me look it up here.
Emanations. An abstract but perceptible thing that issues or originates from a source.
Yeah, I mean...
That seems right?
Yeah.
It's their spirits are
right
emanating
enough.
from their... Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he's talking about something else. We'll go onward. Undiscovered Mugato says, such a great premise I could almost see it as a novel. Voyager does okay with it. Here's what I want to know, though. When Cenotaph kills you and transports you, you're naked, right? And when you die, certain things loosen. That means Harry Kim beamed into the hallway on Voyager, prostate and completely naked in front of his coworkers, most likely shitting himself. Good thing Starfleet are consummate professionals. I bet the Maquis laughed. 3 desecrated alien corpses out of 5. It's true.
Yeah, the naked thing is weird because the fact that he manages to get out of there by wrapping himself in the shroud implies that it only transports organic matter, really, right?
Yeah, the shroud stays behind. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little weird because I thought maybe they took it off them or something after they put them in the sarcophagus, but that would have been bad for Harry if they did that.
Well, just one other thing I thought was funny. You could tell that this guy and his wife had not been intimate in a while because she did not realize her husband weighed 5 times what he weighs normally when Harry Kim is in that thing. Couldn't they have picked an actor who is basically the same body size as Kim to make that a little bit more believable? He's so small compared to him that it's like, this is not the same mummy that you've got here.
Yeah, yeah.
Rayhan Jaffer says, anthropology is the study of humans. Commander Sharpie Face is just making shit up as he goes along. Hey, Clay, there's a spider on your shoulder. Aha, made you look. Cost me 3 sentences, but it was worth it. 3, shut up about your people, Chakotay's, out of 5. 2 more comments. Changeling says, I like this mind F as a premise. Basically, what if an angel tells you God is dead and heaven is a lie? Could have done without the cheap, we can only stay for this amount of time because engines drama. They already have to go home. Isn't that enough? Also, brain cancer makes it easier to cure your death. When there's no room left in planet hell, the Harrys will walk the earth. 4 family members voting for me to kill myself out of 5. Brandon Howell says, I have a question about this one. Why do the Venori have thanatologists, which is an earth word? And how does Haddle's ceremonial death shroud get to him if his father and grandfather are on one of the asteroids? Well, they don't. It stays behind. It's one of those strange things. This story would have worked better with someone other than Harry Kim being the one taken. And hey, there's Deep Throat from the X-Files in another Star Trek episode. 2.5 Garrili trees out of 5. I think I pronounced that right. Thanks, everybody.
The thanatologist thing stood out to me as well, but I always chalk that stuff up to just... I don't know...
What's a thanatologist?
I don't know, but it's just a very... something to do with the study of Thanatos, I guess.
Death. Scientific study of death. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just chalk that stuff up to like, well, the idea here is universal translator, blah, 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 blah. So it doesn't. That stuff never really bothers me.
They have their own god that they're naming their science after, and it's saying, this is a thesaurus for this guy. It's
right.
The god of death. Yep. Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about this episode called Emanations. We're now going to rate it. So what'd you think, Clay? You like this one? Is this enough? You said it was your favorite of the season. Is it enough to give it a 5, or are you gonna cool it off a little bit there?
No, I'm gonna go with a 4. I really, really like this, and like I think about Enterprise, and I know it's unfair to keep comparing these two shows, or maybe it's not. I don't know, but
we'll run out of gas out of doing this eventually.
Yeah. But in this case, I think about Dear Doctor, which was, I think I gave that a 5. I think I don't remember if you gave
it a 5. No, I did not.
And I thought my brain was doing more like long form theoretical thinking about concepts and ideas in this episode than anything presented to me in Dear Doctor. Like, Dear Doctor's good. Like, it's got the one it's got the one core concept they're kind of doing their thing with, and they do it really well. But this is just, if you've listened to this show for a long time, you know that I tend to value bigger swings that don't totally connect versus the ones that are just kind of like fine. Like, I'm much more forgiving to a big swing that doesn't quite nail it. I think this is a big swing, and I think it nails it in a very specific kind of way. I would agree that I don't think it is as complete an episode as it could be, but I do think the attempt is interesting enough for me to give it a high grade. Because like I said, I couldn't think of another episode like this that I'd seen in a long time on Star Trek.
Yeah.
That was, just bringing a lot of interesting concepts and a lot of interesting conflicts that weren't necessarily completely wrapped up by the end of the episode. And it just made me engage with it in a way that these shows haven't in a while.
Yeah. I would agree. It's a weird one because the sprawl is so crazy. Like the places that it chooses to go is really out there and unfocused and kind of messy. But at the same time, it's an interesting take on things that you don't see, or we haven't seen from the show in a long time. I'm assuming you're going to give it a 4 then in that case. I don't know if you said that and I just missed it.
I think I said, I don't know. If I didn't, yes, I'd give it a 4.
Because my thing is always, would I show this to somebody? And I wonder about this episode being that case, like because I think that I would show Eye of the Needle to somebody because I think that's a pretty solid episode of Voyager and everything. But it's tough. I do think I want to reward it. I'll say this is a 4. If this is this would probably be one of the episodes this season that I would suggest to show to somebody just because of how fascinating I thought it was. I do just have a problem. It's kind of a weak 4 because I do think that I think that just the Harry on the planet stuff is not very good. It's not strong enough to really deserve the amount of time that they spend there with those two characters, with Harry and that alien who's dying.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I thought I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I'll give it a 4. We'll both give it 4s. Emanations, a decent episode of Star Trek Voyager. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed the show, patreon.com/ThePensky File, the best way to support us, patreon.com/ThePensky File. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we head out of here?
Yeah, as Wes mentioned on Patreon, Amanda and myself, the Rotten Horror Picture Show team, are covering the second string, as we call it, of Stephen King adaptations. January was It Chapter 2. February was Silver Bullet. March was Salem's Lot. April will be Needful Things. So that's kind of the path we're going there. Rounding out in December with the 1990 adaptation of It, which I'm very much looking forward to. There's also a couple badass-related Patreon episodes up there now. Sean and I talking about The Batman, and also the two of us talking about the Red Hood comic that we're working on together. Sean's newest chapter of his White Knight saga has just started hitting shelves, and he and I worked on a spin-off about Jason Todd the Red Hood that'll be coming out. I don't think there's an official date yet. It's sometime in like August or September or something like that. So if you want to hear us talk about that, that's where you can find it.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. As always, patreon.com/ThePensky File. Get all that stuff. There's more podcasts on the Patreon than there are on the main feeds at this point. So
wow,
go over there
that's crazy.
If you're interested. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for leaving your thoughts about Emanations. The next one is I don't know if I can pull it up quick enough. I always do this. I don't really know why I do, but it's called prime factors. So some math for everybody.
Great.
Thanks very much. We'll see you later.